Hello all, welcome back to another session on web methods. So in this, I would like to talk about this web methods SAP adapters. So in short, I wanted to say how web methods connect to SAP system to do the linking between web methods and SAP. So I don't have any specific license to show like how this works in real time. So that's the reason I'm making this as a theory class. So I'll show you like what is web methods and what are the concepts. Web methods was SAP adapters and how things happen in web methods SAP adapters. So let's see. So basically, web methods allows to connect to the SAP system using an adapter service, which is called SAP Adapter. So the web methods adapter, it generally allows you to extend SAP business process and it integrate with non-SAP products using open and non-proprietary technology. So basically in web methods, SAP adapter, you can do synchronous and asynchronous communications with SAP systems using RFC and TRFCs, and it allows bidirectional and real-time communications to and from SAP systems. So I'll go through some abbreviations which we will go through this PPT actually. So we have these are the general abbreviations we'll go through, which are BAPI, ABAP, IDOCS, RFC, TRFC, and ALIS. So BAPI is nothing but business application programming interface, which is the term used in SAP to perform the business operations in SAP side, and that is written using the ABAP language. So that we can ignore, but it just wanted to tell you that how BAPIs are written. And let's say if you are using SAP adapters and you're receiving EDI messages. So we have functionalities in web methods which consumes the EDI and then sends the data to SAP system using the SAP adapters using the iDocs. iDocs are nothing but the intermediate documents. For example, if you consider in business scenarios, let's say if an EDI system is sending you a purchase order, so that web methods consumes it using the trading partners, and then we transform to SAP IDOC formats. In this case, it would be SAP PO formats, and that SAP PO is wrapped inside the XML. It is a kind of XML document structure. So that XML document structure will be posted to SAP using the SAP adapters. And in the previous slide, we said about this. What do you say? The SAP adapt, sorry, RFCs. So RFC is like remote functional calls. So it's like you wanted to invoke some functions at SAP end. So in that cases, we use these RFCs, and there are two types of RFCs. One is transactional RFCs, and which is called as TRFC. Another is asynchronous RFC, and there is application link enabling ALEs, so that we can see in the classes coming above. Yeah. So generally, what is web methods SAP adapter? So the web methods SAP adapter, this generally allows you to extend your business process, and it allows you to integrate with non-SAP products using open and non-proprietary technology. And as I said, it allows the synchronous and asynchronous communication with SAP systems, and it allows bidirectional and real-time communications uh, from the SAP systems. So what do we generally do in that? We execute SAP's BAPIs. So you can quickly and easily create XML-based services that execute a BAPI, and applications within your organizations, they'll be able to invoke the services to execute a BAPI on the XML system, sorry, SAP system. So similarly, if your business partner wants to send some data over the internet, they'll just invoke a service at the web method end, which will be exposed to them. And when the data is sent, that service will internally invoke the SAP adapter, and that SAP adapter will execute a BAPI call. So it can be both synchronous and asynchronous. And we can also execute some remote functional calls. So this can be accessed using the SAP adapter. So that we can see in the next slides. And we can also route SAP business documents based on the criteria which you can specify. So there are different types of transport available that you can send. These include routing of a business document to other SAP system or to some other remote URL in the XML formats. And as I said, we can also send some IDOC to the SAP adapter. So you can use the functionalities specified inside the WM SAP to send the IDOCs to SAP. And you can also call some services from SAP systems also. So these all things can be done using the SAP adapter. Yeah. So these are the things which discussed BAPIs. So BAPIs are the business functions in SAPs that are written in BAPIs. So and RFC is nothing but the remote functional calls is what we said. So and RFC client is a terminology at the SAP end to that sends the RFCs to an SAP system to invoke some functions. And you have transactional RFCs. So they can handle both inbound and outbound. And there are whenever you invoke some SAP systems, that you have a transaction ID, which is called as TID. It's basically a unique identifier to ensure exactly one's execution. And same thing like the routing listeners, generally they are used for accepting messages and route them to configured locations. So it's like messages can be routed to an SAP system or other integration server using this formats. So and we have this. How do we do this SAP integration? Yeah. So SAP adapter, it generally incorporates a fully fledged RFC client and server. These are generally used for providing the real-time bidirectional communications to and from the SAP system. So from an SAP application point of view, SAP adapter calling is nothing but it's just kind of some another RFC server only. So they'll just invoke it. So SAP adapter, as I said, it supports both asynchronous and synchronous RFCs. So using this, they can invoke all the functions or invoke the services and all those things in using this SAP adapters. So if you see the architecture, right? So generally, SAP system consists of this RFCs, which we know, and an integration server. If you wanted to connect to the IS, so sorry, to the SAP system, it uses the integration server. So SAP adapter uses the some integration server uses the SAP adapter to send the data. So that uses listeners, RFC listeners, RFC routing notifications, and all those things in this. Yeah. So SAP adapter incorporates an RFC server and RFC clients to send the real-time inbound and outbound communications to and fro from the SAP system. Yeah. So, and this is how the architecture generally looks like from web methods to what do you say, the SAP system. So that can be like say the systems invoke the services, and that services internally uses the web methods adapter service, which is SAP adapter to invoke, and that adapter service internally uses the RFC client to send the invoke the services in the SAP system. And in turn, if SAP wants to send some data to the target system, then the it invokes the there will be listeners on that particular RFCs which listen to that, and this, and once the remote functional call is done in this case, so the listener routes invokes a listener notification which sends the data to their services. So the listener notification will invoke some other service that will invoke the service configured inside the listener notification, and they send the data. Yeah. So how the inbound requests are mapped to an adapter service. So SAP Adapter performs this action for asynchronous notifications and for synchronous notifications also. So in these cases, as I said, in this case, SAP is trying to send the data to web method server. As I said, it will be using uh, so the SAP adapter generally listens for the RFC request from the soap systems, and once any function is created or some changes are being done on the RFCs of the SAP system, then the RFC listener will listen to it and it invokes an adapter notification. Then the adapter notification will invoke a service that will execute and send the data, or if it wants to publish it to the document, I mean, they can do the async processing by sending the data to the like say locally publish or use JMS to send the data. Yeah. And you can also use the SAP adapter generally provides rich capabilities for synchronous RFCs, asynchronous IDOCs, and BAPIs. This will generally give you better control of your relationship with your partners. So you can configure the SAP adapter to send an IDOC to another SAP system. And BAPIs generally provide a simple way to access SAP solutions. They can handle both async and sync to an SAP system using the same XML message formats. So generally, I think BAPI calls are provided using the ALE services inside the SAP systems. So BAPI interfaces are developed according to strict guidelines. So they are well defined, stable, and they are well documented. So and all the transaction status information and all they are stored inside stored locally or in the centralized repository. So in integration server, they are stored inside the WM SAP package inside the transaction store. So that is used to store locally. So generally SAP adapter, this provides a persistent transaction store. It is used to track all IDOCs and TRFCs that are routed to and from the SAP systems. Yeah. And SAP, whenever you are creating a connection in integration server, right? So you go to integration server, adapters, and check on the IS, and then you create the SAP adapters. So the most important thing is to create the connection pools. So whenever you enable a connection, so generally the integration server enables the initializes the connection pool. So it creates the it's similar like the JDBC adapter connections where the minimum pool size and maximum pool size and all these things are initialized in that. So whenever adapter service, so the significance of this connection pool is, so whenever an adapter service needs a connection, so the integration server provides a connection from the pool. So if no connections are available, then if the maximum pool size are not reached, then server creates one or more connections according to the number we specify in the pool increment size. So in other, let's say if I go to the integration server, I'll show you the JDBC, how that will be there. So if you check the JDBC adapter, we have JDBC connections and all, right? Yeah. So I'm generally talking about this thing. So here, whenever adapter needs a connection, yeah. So the integration service provides a connection from the pool. If no connections are available in the pool, then the integration server maximum pool, it checks whether the maximum pool has reached. If the maximum pool has not been reached in this case, so what happens is the server creates one or more connections based on the pool increment size, and then it adds to the connection pool. Yeah. Let's assume that the connection pool is full. So which means the maximum pool size is already reached. So the requesting service will wait for the integration service to obtain a connection. So that parameter and all will be specified in the block time out here. And periodically, integration server will also inspect the pools and check for the inactive connections. So that will be checked in the expire timeout. So that's the significance of connection pools, block timeout, minimum connection pool, and what's the I mean, why do you use the block timeout and all those things. These are similar to JDBC as well as the SAP adapters. Yeah. So SAP adapters generally they allow you to connect to the adapter resources, and this will initiate an operation on the resource of integration server. So you will be using to interact with the functional modules on the SAP system. So let's say if you're receiving an PO or invoice from the trading partner, so that details will be converted to the XML format in whatever details we need, and then we use the send IDOC service from the SAP. Let's say you have these things here. Yeah, WMSAP. We use this send IDOC service to send the data to SAP system, which will invoke the details we specify. We specify the server name and all those things. So this is one which I was talking about. We'll be using the create TID, and we'll also be using some IDOCs where we'll convert the document to IDOC or any data to IDOC, and then we use the send IDOC to send the data to SAP system. So these are the services. Like say if you are receiving the XML data, I mean data from uh, the EDI system, then this one will be used to convert the data to IDOC list. So which will be which, and once the document is converted to the IDOC list, we use this to send the data to the SAP system based on the server name and all those details we configured on the SAP side. So we generally configure SAP adapters using the templates provided by the SAP adapter. So there are different types of templates. One is a RFC adapter service synchronous. So this generally invokes RFC on the SAP system, and it can execute a TRFC, or to confirm a transaction we use this adapter. And then we have adapter listeners and notifications. So if you go to this the slides which we are talking about. Yeah. So here we have these adapter listeners and notifications. So before you create an RFC that invokes a service or send IDOC to the SAP adapter, we must configure the SAP system to have an RFC destination. So this is what happens is the client said we have a discussion with the SAP system, and we have the discussion with the target server. In this case, let's assume that there's business is between some EDI partner and SAP. So we talk to both the guys and say, see, we received these details. So from EDI side, we need these details. From SAP side, we need the connection parameters. What are the functions that you wanted to invoke at SAP side, and what is the server name, what are the ports name, what are the users, and we get all those details and we fill those in our SAP adapter connection screen, and then we perform the operations. Yeah. So you must also configure this SAP adapter to have an RFC listener. So we need the RFC listeners to listen on the RFCs, and we also need to have listener notifications. So it's like whenever the some function is invoked on the SAP system, the RFC listener will listen to that and it invokes a notification. So this notification either indicates what service the SAP adapter is to we should execute, and let's say if you are receiving some IDOC from SAP system or some remote functional call, we execute that and then get the data from SAP, and then we send the data to the target. In this case, let's say they have sent a PO. Yeah. And SAP system sends an acknowledgement that it sends us this stat message saying that, okay, see, I have received your order, and we capture the sysstart message, and we convert that into 997 acknowledgement and send it to EDI system. So this is how you do it. So the listener notification indicates whether what service the SAP adapter is to execute, and when it receives a message from the SAP system, and it will publish a, and at the listener notification, what it generally does is it will, if it is a synchronous call, it will invoke the service, or if it is a sync call, it just puts the message in queue. We will configure the adapter. So what do you say? The either we wanted to publish within the integration server, we use the webMethods supplied messaging system, like say broker to broker or integration to integration server. We'll publish it locally and do it, or else if you wanted to publish it to JMS, then you need to configure the JMS queues or topics in this case, and we send the data. Yeah. So as I said, it uses the adapter listener to enable the SAP system. And I said listeners generally monitors the SAP systems for RFC request to send the data. Yeah. And send the data to the integration server. So when a call is made from the SAP system, so in this case, then the listener passes to the message to the listener notification. Yeah. So the listener notification, this will work in conjunction with the listener to filter the messages and process the RFC request in the SAP adapter. So it generally uses different listener notifications to process request, and we can use ALE listener notifications for incoming IDOC synchronously, or we can use RFC listener notifications using uh, for listener notifications or ALE listener notifications or routing notifications and all these things. So we as I said, we have ALE listener notifications synchronous, so which is generally used for handling the incoming documents synchronously, or if you wanted to handle it asynchronously where you don't want to get the response, we just wanted to send the data. In that cases, you can use this for handling IDOCs. We can use the ALEs. So for asynchronous handling, you can use the ALE listener notification asynchronous. And if there are any functions executed at RFCs, and if you wanted to handle that function calls, so in that cases, you use this RFC listener notifications. So you have RFC listener notification synchronous, and you have RFC listener notification asynchronous. Yeah, and that can be used for consuming the data from SAP systems. And you also have this generally routing notifications also. If you see here, the significance of that routing notification is to um, so it generally is a default routing listener, so that is used for routing the messages. So it determines to where we need to route the message based on the routing notifications that you define and all those things. So it generally does the routing listeners, generally what it does is it performs some notification lookup, and after doing the lookup, right, notification of routing notification, routing listener, so let's say routing listener has done some lookup, it has found some message for that particular incoming message, it has found the target notification, then in that cases it will invoke the routing notification, and that's how the outbound transport get invokes. So and yeah, that's mostly it. And as I was saying, that if you wanted to send IDOC to SAP, we'll be using this send IDOC service. Yeah, we will be using this send IDOC service, where first you will be creating the TID. TID is nothing but the transaction ID, and you will convert the incoming EDI document, kind of BizDoc or something, to IDOC, using the document to IDOC. Yeah, and then you will be using the send IDOC service to send the data to SAP system. Yeah, and once you send the IDOC, then you'll invoke the confirm TID to check whether that confirmation has reached the SAP system. Or even you can use this, what do you say, the ALEs also. As we said, we can use ALEs for sending IDOCs. So for sending the IDOC to SAP using ALE service, you will be using the SAP transport, this thing from WMSAP. You have ALEs here. So these ALEs you can use, and you can use the outbound process to send the data. You will specify the outbound, all the transport params details here, yeah, and the server name and IDOC, and what's the action you wanted to perform, and confirm the TID, and send the details, yeah. And generally at SAP side, all the details will be specified to us. So the details will be the RFC destination, and all those details, like what are the host name, what's the username, and all those things. So generally SAP Adapter uses some jar files, which when you install the WMSAP, so you have SAP, what is that? So you think it should be there. So these jars are not there, then generally SAP things would be not, it will not be working. I need to check the documentation to what kind of jars are needed. So generally, as far as I know, we need some SAP Java connector libraries, which are placed inside the directory here in libjars. And you have, let's say, if I go to packages and see if there are any jars in WMSAP. Code, yeah, some jars, if you wanted to support the IDOC functionalities, or some other functionalities of, if you wanted to use some Java classes and all, you need some adapters which are SAP JCO jars, something will be the Java connector jars, and all will be needs to be there. So you configure the SAP adapters by going to adapters and SAP adapters. Right now, I don't have the SAP adapters, but I just wanted to show where you can go, where you generally go and configure it. So you go to adapters, and in this you will get the SAP adapter page, where you will create the connection similar to JDBC. Like say you'll click on configure connection, and then in this case you'll get the create new connection for SAP and all those things. You fill the details like what's the connection type, and you select the RFC and RFC connection to connect to the RFC adapt to connect to the SAP system. You need RFC connections, and to send the iDocs, you need the ALEs. And if you wanted to invoke some BAPI functions and all those things in SAP, you use these RFCs. So ALEs is for iDocs, and RFCs is for invoking some remote procedure calls or functional calls. So once you create the RFC connection, as I said, you will be mentioning the server details, and all those username, passwords, and all those details, and you enable the connection parameters. So that's how you generally do the SAP adapters functionality with web methods. So you use the listeners to configure the listeners, and once the listeners are created, so it's similar to JDBC polling notifications. Once you create the JDBC polling notifications, you come to the screen and then create the polling notifications here. Similarly, when you create listeners, So you come to SAP adapter and then create the listener notifications, which I was saying as this one, where you come and create the notifications here. So yeah, for this listener notifications, you will create the listener notifications specifically for those screens, and that's it. Thank you for listening. So this is how you configure the SAP adapters in web methods.